Congresswoman, welcome back to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Nash, for having me. I love coming on and having conversations with the people of New Mexico.
Well, we appreciate it. Let's start with Chaco. You have taken issue with how the Interior Department has gone about this. How does it compare to how these protections were won in the first place?
Well, when we did this the first time, when Secretary Haaland first protected the 10-mile buffer zone around Chaco, there were numerous public hearings. There was in-person hearings. It was about 120 days before they took action. And in this instance, Secretary Burgum and the Department of Interior have acted in 7 days. Compare that. And this is incredibly destructive, what they are proposing. And that's why I think so many of us have opposed it. Because when you destroy one of the 4,700 sites that are in that 10-mile zone, it's irreplaceable. Now, a molecule of gas, we can drill for that outside of that 10-mile zone. That's lots of gas in San Juan County that we could go for. But we need to protect that which is sacred, that which is historic, that which can never be replaced.
And the buffer was meant to last for 20 years. Was it always going to be threatened, though, as Washington changes hands over the years?
Well, I have introduced a law to make permanent the protections around Chaco. I carry it in the House, and Senator Lujan carries it in the Senate. I anticipate that we will be able to get that passed out of the House one more time, and then hopefully out of the Senate.
In this
not
moment?
in this,
Okay.
not in this Congress.
If Democrats retake the House in the midterms.
Yeah, but I'm very, very optimistic about the fact that we will retake the House, and then that we'll do these kinds of protections. Because one of the things I'm very angry about is Secretary Burgum came before the Natural Resources Committee. I had a conversation with them about this, and I said, "Will you commit to me that you will meet with the tribes that are impacted by any Chaco decision, that there will be a decision maker meeting with them in person?" And he said, "Absolutely." Have they done that? No.
Well, and you mentioned tribal citizens. There has been some disagreement over the protections between impacted Pueblos and the Navajo Nation, with the latter saying that the buffer impacted their sovereignty to be able to do as they wish with their land. So what's your message to Navajo Alaatees who are maybe cheering this decision?
So I've met with Alaatees, I've met with the Navajo Nation around this because of the legislation. And I actually changed the legislation to make sure that we recognize Navajo's cultural ties to the area, because we need to recognize that Navajo also has cultural ties to the area. My legislation and the withdrawal are very explicit. It has no impact on any tribal trust land, has no impact on any Alaatee land, and you can continue with existing well sites that are there. They can continue if somebody wants to drill.
Just federal land.
Just federal land.
The Navajo Nation President Boo Nygren has said that that would still make it nearly impossible for Alaatees to be able to lease that land because the infrastructure wouldn't exist.
And the legislation's withdrawal says you can put in infrastructure. So I think that what you're having is you're having misinformation provided to the Alaatees about what the legislation and the withdrawal actually does. Because I wanted to make sure I was going to be protective of tribal Alaatees and tribal trust land, because they get to decide what they do on that land. But on federal land, we can have these kinds of protections, because once again, you can drill outside that 10-mile zone anywhere on federal lands.
Well, so public comment, the 7 days of public comment that you mentioned has closed. So is that it for New Mexicans who want to have their voice heard around this?
No, because there needs to be some further environmental impact analysis. Now, they've said, though, that they're going to rush that too. They've already told us what they're going to do. We're rushing through all of this. We're going to make a decision by June. Even given that there's going to be additional input required.
Because after the environmental review, there's an additional a public comment that's available. Is that right?
In the environmental review process. So
Okay.
they had a 7-day comment, which is the scoping, and they're going to go in the next phase. And I also would not be surprised if we don't see litigation. But on my end, and I think in the public's end, New Mexicans need to make sure that their voices are heard. I love hearing from my constituents. is this important to you? Do you care? What do you want to do? But we also recognize that this landscape, it's not like it's something old and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and it's something from a long time ago. This landscape is still used for cultural purposes today. So its religious importance carries through from the time it was first built to today. And so when you listen to the tribal leaders, the tribal members speak about its importance, they will tell you that it's an unbroken chain, and we don't want to break that history.
Now, Chaco isn't the only public land in New Mexico that the Trump administration is eyeing for development. The administration just canceled a proposed 20-year withdrawal on the Upper Pecos watershed as well. That also brings to an end next month a 2-year pause that Deb Haaland's Interior Department put into place while this longer process played out. What does the cancellation of this withdrawal mean for New Mexicans?
But we know that there are foreign mining corporations that want to mine in the Upper Pecos. We also remember what it was like the last time they mined in the Upper Pecos.
Right, in the early 90s, there was a mine spill that contaminated the river. I think a lot of New Mexicans will remember what that looked like.
Yeah. Do you remember the dead fish? Do you remember the fact that you couldn't go fishing up there? Do you remember how much pain and suffering there was for the people who lived there, the farmers? That Pecos River runs all the way down through Texas. It runs through my family land and the Villanueva Valley. It is such an important source. It is the source of all the water that flows down through the Pecos. Think about all those villages. We don't want that to happen again.
So those villagers, what can they do at this point now that this has been canceled?
The same thing that we're all doing is like we need to raise our voices. We need to talk about it, coming on programs like this to make sure that New Mexicans know what's going on, because let's follow the money, right? The only reason they're doing all of this is because the Trump administration, Republicans are just into drill baby drill, mine baby mine. They don't care about the economic consequences. They're not giving voice to the communities who are from the ground up from here saying don't do this, and it is unanimous in Pecos. You have business owners, ranchers, farmers, county, city, tribal people, because that land is also of significance to for tribal heritage. So they're dictating from DC to local communities what should be done. And once again, I always remind everybody that these foreign corporations are not going to pay a dime in royalties. At least when you have oil and gas drilling, right? We get some royalties, we get some tax. These foreign corporations and no mining corporations, they don't pay a dime. And those resources belong to the public.
Well, speaking of dictating things for New Mexicans from DC, there's a new New Mexican in DC in former Republican Congressman Steve Pearce. He's awaiting confirmation by the full Senate as the next director of the Bureau of Land Management. With these two big New Mexico rollbacks happening right now, do you have any sense of what role, if any, Pearce has played in these?
So I don't know whether he's played any role in the existing rollbacks, but he will play a role on all these issues with regards to land tenure. You know, we're looking at what kind of protections do we do for the Caja del Rio, which has a lot of BLM land. There's BLM land in all of these areas, some of it's forest land. I would hope that he would remember what it looks like in New Mexico, the beauty of New Mexico and the fragility of New Mexico. Like our landscape is gorgeous. Like, don't we love, we are constantly in awe and wonder of how lucky can we get when we are hiking and fishing and hunting and grazing and working our land, of how beautiful it is. But we also know how fragile it is. And I'm hoping he would remember that. And even as he may want to continue with oil and gas development, which we have, I have a lot of oil and gas development, where can you do it? And how can you do it in a way that is environmentally responsible, that makes sure that workers are protected and honored? And there's a way to do that. And New Mexico has shown the way in many areas. You know, we have better environmental protections for our oil and gas development than they do in Texas. Why doesn't he take some of those lessons of how you can do it better, it's not perfect yet, in New Mexico, and apply them nationwide.
Have you spoken to him?
I have not spoken to him since he's
Do you plan
been
to?
named. Yes, I will. And he will have to come before my committee at the House Natural Resources once he's named. You know, we don't get to confirm. And we'll see what our senators are concerned, and New Mexicans are concerned, because we've seen what he's done with regards to, as a politician. You know, he's rallied against protecting our air, land, and water. But maybe I'm hopeful, right, that he will remember what it's like here, and he will remember the beauty of New Mexico and try to protect it.
Congresswoman, thank you. I'm going to ask you to stick around. We're going to speak a little bit further next about the Iran war.
Thank you.